debate that was suspended last Wednesday, wherein we were discussing the Damoff motion, which had a sub-amendment put forward by Madame Michaud, and then a subsequent amendment put forward by Mr. Motz. So technically, I think that we are to be discussing the sub-amendments. I just want to clarify between Mr. Motz and Madame Michaud as to whether there has been, whether we are still having two sub-amendments or we are talking about one. Christina?
Le dernier libellé que j'ai vu, je pense.
The last wording that I saw, well, I think that we should go with Glenn's wording because I really didn't specify what I was looking for, but I think we were dealing with a timing issue there. But having discussed it with the Liberals, I think Pam wanted to suggest something else. So perhaps I'll let her speak before we decide what to do with that amendment.
Okay, so unless it is formally withdrawn or we are still dealing with two sub-amendments. I saw Pam's hand first, then Jack, then Shannon.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Christina. Yeah, I, in the spirit of cooperation that we were trying to get towards at the last meeting, and there were comments made by all parties as, you know, if we just work together. And I know there's been conversations around how can we make this work that we can get everything done, being respectful of timing for translations and everything else. So with regard to the amendment, I would propose changing my motion so to 3 meetings that would be held this Wednesday, May 12th, the 31st, and June 9th. And then if everybody has a pen, I could go through a suggested schedule. Would that be okay, Chair? It might make it easier for conversation here.
Okay, I'm happy to do it. Technically, I suppose it's not
order.
Yeah, it's not in order.
Okay.
So I think it's useful information that there has been discussions, which I was encouraging last Wednesday, but we are bound by the order in which the motions and the
Chair,
yes.
the part of the motion before us is following all the work in front of us. So perhaps I could just go through the order of work in front of us under that part. That was Glenn's part of the amendment, right?
I have to respect Mr. Harris's request for a point of order first.
Okay.
My point of order, I guess, is to we have a motion, I guess, that we can discuss, and yeah, Pam is right that you can talk about the dates and things like that. But I'm just wondering, is there, you know, if we have a motion on the floor to get into that level of detail, perhaps we can have a more general discussion about what it is we want to accomplish. We've got 10 meetings left between now and when we rise. Some of them may disappear. Some of them we know we're committed to. And the actual schedule as to what happens on what day probably should be filled in once we've agreed as to what we're going to hope to accomplish between now and the end of June.
Shannon.
So Chair, sorry, are we discussing the point of order? Am I finished now? I can't talk about the work that we want to do.
Yeah. Okay, then you okay. We're back to Pam and then to Shannon.
So I won't get into the dates because that's according to Jack. So the work would be the ideologically motivated violent extremism study. It would be finalizing the racism study. We would have Minister Blair and Commissioner Lucky come to deal with Bastarache. We would review the Levesque study, we would do the border study, and we would do the CSC study. So I've got a potential schedule to do that. And as I said, we would shorten the IMVE study to 3 meetings. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Or Shannon.
Thanks, Chair. I think I'm sort of out of turn here, but I just wanted to add before we completely dispense with our discussion on the motion that after we've dealt with the timing issue, I will I will want to make what I hope will be taken as a friendly amendment to sort of expand the scope of the motion so that we really can get the most meaningful work out of it as possible.
Okay, I'm holding
So
on
I'm-
by my fingernails with the proper order here, but
Yeah.
what is
So I'll just
on
give you a
the,
heads up that I want to sneak in between the
Okay.
timing issue and the final vote. I would like to, I'll want to sneak in there.
okay,
Okay, thank you.
okay, Jack.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was looking in detail of what it is we're trying to accomplish here, and I think it's very unlikely that we can get a report done on the IMVE or a report done on the CSC, both of which we've agreed that we want to do. But I think Pam has made a very strong case, which I think we all agreed with last week, that the IMVE study should be looked at as quickly as possible. So, looking at the fact that we have 10 meetings left after today, realistically, the sensible thing, in my view, is to devote 2 of them guaranteed to IMVE, 2 of them to CSC. We've already committed 1 on racism, and hopefully we'll finish that. If we don't, we might need a part of another meeting. We've committed to 1 on the border study. We are certainly committed to 1 on the Bastarache, i.e. Lucky Blair meeting, and potentially drafting instructions. And we've appeared to be committed to at least 2 meetings on Levesque, and hopefully get a study out of that. But I think if we do that, that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, leaving 1 floating meeting that we could use for something else. If we can agree that we're actually, in the fall, if there is a fall, that we can either complete the CSC study and do a report, complete the IMVE study and do a report. If we don't get finished the Levesque study, we could do a report. But we could commit to finishing the racism study, commit to finishing the Bastarache study, and start and try to do the Levesque study if we can. And if there's a meeting left over, we can have either IMVE or CSC as that 3rd meeting. That would be a compromise of everybody saying, well, we're not really going to finish 3 reports. We'd be lucky if we finished racism, Bastarache, and Levesque, and that might be difficult. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to accomplish what we've agreed we want to touch on between now and June 23rd. That's my proposal. Then when those meetings will take place, I have ideas about that too, but that's just a detail. If we can get an agreement that we'll have 2 for sure IMVE, 2 for sure CSC, 1 border, 1 racism, 2 Levesque, and 1 Bastarache. That takes 9 meetings with 1 up in the air.
Okay, before I recognize Pam, I just want to bring us back to some sort of order. And the order is that the Damoff motion is on the floor. Michaud had an amendment, which I am now assuming is subsumed into the amendment of Mott's, and we haven't dealt with the Mott's amendment. And before, and I would like to know from the committee which way to proceed here. Do you want to bring the Mott's amendment to a vote or a withdrawal on Glenn's part, or do you want an amendment to the Damoff motion be put forward either in Pam's fashion or Jack's fashion, one or the other? So I'm open to how to proceed with this because I don't want to lose the procedural niceties of the committee. So I see Pam's hand up and then Jack's hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Chair, it's hard to get into. In essence, I agree with Jack. I think we're both on the same page on this. It's just a matter of order. But in essence, I don't want to remove that we report to the House for CSC or IMVE because the assumption is we're coming back in September and we can finish reports on these if need be, but I think we want to get this done. So in essence, but I think unless we deal with Jack and Christina's motions, it's hard to move forward with this. So if
You mean with Glenn's and
with
Christina's?
what Jack and I have and Christina have all been talking about in terms of let's try and get all of this work done, but it does require us to deal with the motions that are on the floor before we can actually have a fulsome discussion on where we're going.
I'll look to Glenn. Can you see your way clear to withdraw the motion, your sub amendment? You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm looking for the document that lays out the new proposed schedule.
I don't
Can't
think
deal with that until we deal
No.
with the motions.
Well, so I'm not prepared to withdraw my amendment until I have an understanding of what the proposed dates are and what that looks like and what we are going to set aside and when and what that all looks like. I mean, I can't. I feel very strongly that we need to get at the stuff that we're, we need to get at the stuff that we wanted and that we needed to get at. But if you're willing to do some amicable, Pam, to a friendly amendment on the main motion, I'm certainly prepared to withdraw my amendment to Christina's and move with the timeline that I thought I heard you propose at some point in time.
so. Let me just look to the clerk so that I can again maintain some procedural regularity. So the Mott's amendment is still alive. Should Pam be proposing a sub amendment that we would deal with first, and then the Mott's amendment, and then the main motion as amended or not? Or can she amend the motion as it is presently on the floor?
Technically, you're supposed to dispose of the sub-amendment, and if it's to get more information before there's a request for withdrawal, then you could proceed that way. But the sub-amendment is still technically before the committee, or the amendment, I should say, still before the committee.
Yeah, I agree. But can a second sub-amendment be put forward?
No, they have to be dealt with successively, otherwise they can overlap and contradict.
And if they were put forward by someone other than Pam?
The same would apply.
Okay. So one way or another, we have to deal with Glenn's sub-amendment before we can deal with the main motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at what I think to be the proposed changes. I mean, my issue last time was, were we prepared to have the IMVE, the extremism study, starting today? We weren't. We aren't. Are we prepared to have it starting on Wednesday? I would hope so, because I think I hope that we would be prepared if that's what's being proposed. And if Christina is, it was the 10th that was my hang up, that we weren't ready for it. And as I said before, Pam, I'm willing to do a withdrawal of my amendment to Christina's motion if we want to, as Shannon briefly articulated, we want to expand this study. And I think it's such an important issue that we probably should, so we're not limited in our scope. And we'll get to that when we get to it. So I'm prepared, Chair, to withdraw my amendment to Christina's motion, given there is some movement on the flexibility of the schedule, and we can get at some of the things that we need to get at. That would be that's what our motion or our purpose was last time, was to make sure that we get at the things that we already have on our plate.
Okay. Okay, I'll take that as a withdrawal. Mr. Fisher.
I don't know if I need to speak now. Glenn just opened up a real window of clarity there that added to Jack's window of clarity. So I have a good idea now that we actually are trying to get to the point of the discussion that we had the last meeting or the previous day. So I don't think I need to make any more comments, but I want to thank Glenn for that, because that really did help with the clarity of the process. Thank you.
Okay, so can either Pam or Jack arrive at some reconciliation as to what is being proposed? Maybe I should go to Pam first and then see where, and then we'll try to find where the differences are between what Pam is proposing and what Jack is proposing. And then I see, well, Christina's hand was up, but now it's down. Oh, okay. Okay,
Thanks,
so
Chair.
Pam?
So I think the only difference is the number of meetings for Levesque, and I mean, I'm agreeable to what Jack was saying in terms of number of meetings. So what I propose is that May 12th, we do officials for IMVE. Now, we don't have anything planned at the moment. They are people that can be readily available. So RCMP, CSIS, and CSE. May 26th, I think all of us want to finalize the racism study and get it tabled in the House, and that certainly should be doable in a day if we all put our minds to it. So, and then I'm proposing May 31st, we do IMVE, bring back Blair and Lucky on June 2nd. At that point, the Levesque study should be written and translated, because we know that that takes time to translate. So June 7th, we would start reviewing the Levesque study. June 9th, IMVE. June 14th, the one-day border study we'd agreed on. And then...
Hang on, you're just going a little too quick for me. Okay. June 9th is what?
IMVE.
Mm-hmm.
June 14th, border study.
Okay, yeah.
And then the next three, the 16th, the 21st, and the 23rd on CSC. Based on what Jack was saying, I think we could have some flexibility there in terms of the order, and I'd love to hear from Jack in terms of moving it around. I do think, though, we do need to hear from Blair and Lucky, and I do think that we should try and get a couple of meetings in on IMVE by the end of May. We all listened to David McGinty. I think there's agreement on the committee how urgent this study is. So I do think we need to get a couple of meetings done by the end of the month. I mean, I've backed off quite a bit from where we started, so I'm hoping that committee members will agree with this.
Before I go to Jack, does everybody now understand what it is that Pam is proposing before we get any further confused than we already are? Takeo, are you wiggling your finger, or you can?
Yeah, no, so I was scribbling down notes as quickly as I could, but I didn't get when the second Levesque day will be.
So I had only, sorry, Chair, is it okay if I respond?
Yeah, well, the first Levesque is today. The second Levesque, I think, is the 7th, is it not?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had only put down for one meeting on that. Part of the reason is that I think if we want to try and get it back to the analyst as quickly as we can. Now, I recognize that there's a lot of recommendations in that, but I also think that if we put our minds to it, we can go through that report and determine what we all agree on. And I think there were maybe a fair amount we don't agree on, which is fine. Those would be supplementary or dissenting reports. So I think if we could try to do the sections we agree on in a day. Now, Jack has suggested 2 days, and that may be necessary, and that's fine. We could do June 7th and 9th on Levesque, but I don't think any of us want to spend, the risk we all run is that the longer it takes for us to do Levesque, the less chance we have that it gets tabled in the House because of translation and analyst writing time. So bear that in mind. But I think, we could be flexible and do June 7th and 9th on Levesque if we needed to. Does that make sense,
Okay.
Takeo?
Yeah.
That makes sense if we could, I'm just thinking that it is going to be 2 days. If I, just go by experience on how many days we spent on the racism report, I'm not optimistic that we would get a Levesque, review of the report done in 1 day.
I think so. We all understand the proposal that is in front of the committee, so that we're all talking from the same song sheet. So first up in the choir is Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in general agreement with the approach that Pam has taken. However, I think it's unrealistic, frankly, to have, I mean, impossible to have a Levesque report done in, we're going to be reviewing first of all, we're going to be reviewing something that's drafted for June the 7th. That is not going to be passed that day. There's 50 recommendations that we have, I'm told. I haven't seen them. Plus, there's a whole raft of them that are in the recommendations from witnesses as well. So that's an impossible task. We'd be very lucky if we get a report, if we did nothing else, to ensure that we had the Levesque study.
We're doing lucky on the 2nd.
But June the 2nd is committed already. That is clear. I think we agreed with that. So May the 12th, IMVE, that's agreeable. May the 26th is clear. Hopefully we'll finish that day. There's no actual guarantee on that. I'm satisfied to leave IMVE for May 31st if it is available, but not if the race system study is not finished. Blair Lucky and Bastarache, I think that is hopefully one day, but if we can get drafting instructions on that day, then we can have a report on Bastarache by the end of June. June the 7th, yes, for Levesque. June the 9th, I would want to start the CSC study at that time. And the border study, or we could, I want to start the CSC study early. So the border study may be flexible to go to the 16th, and we can use the 9th for the Levesque study to hopefully get somewhere with that, and then do the CSC on either the 9th or the 14th. And then there's 3 days left. I think we've got to, if we look at, we may need time to do Bastarache. We will still have a second day for the CSC study, and then we'll have the one flex day. But that's the way I would see it shaking down. And if we finish Levesque, that would be wonderful. If not, the fall could be a time when we would finish off the CSC, finish off the IMV report if we don't get time to do it, and the fall Levesque. But the third, I think if we had 2 IMVE meetings in May, and then we have one that could follow in June if there is a place outside of the dates that I've outlined.
So what I'm hearing is agreement all the way to June the 7th, to and including June the 7th. Glenn?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that, Jack, as well. You know, I just want to, Pam mentioned something just a few minutes ago, and I think, Chair, you reinforced it, is that some of these studies will not get to the House, even though we want them there. They won't get there before we rise the end of June. So the CSC study will not be done, as Jack just indicated, before the end of June. The extremism study will not be done before the end of June. So with those things in mind, while it's important that we at least start both of them, we're putting ourselves under the gun to get the studies that need to be before the House before we rise. We're putting them off. And like, quite honestly, the Levesque study is not that long. You know, it should be easily, I believe, should easily be drafted by the 31st, because it's not that long of a study that we can get at then as soon as we can. And it was voted unanimously on by the House to bring it to committee to get this done. So it would be remiss of us to not get it back to the House before we rise, for the House to receive. The same thing on, you know, the racism study certainly has been longer, and you know, we have a timeline for it. I would hope that if we have, like on the 31st, like let's move the Levesque study back to the 31st, and you know, we can start our extremism study Wednesday. We have some witnesses that we're prepared to bring forward, I believe, and I'm sure everyone does for that day. Let's bring the Levesque study and get a good handle on it for the 31st. Blair and Lucky on the 2nd. Levesque can come back on the 7th, and we can finish it off. And then we can get to Jack's. CSC study. I agree earlier, and we're going to have a day. Let's get another extremism study date in there before the end of June as well. And so we have, at least we can get at the things that we can get the reports back to the House that we've committed to before Christmas. We wanted to get back to the House, and we've been not had that opportunity yet. And I would think that would be wise of us to do, because both the CSC study and the extremism study will be things that might take us down a longer path. And I'd hate to start it, because we know we're going to finish it in September. Like, it will not be done at any time before we rise. So why are we cramping our style to not get other things done first? Not first, but in time before the House rises, so that they can be presented. That was the essence of my motion last time, Chair, or my amendment to friendly amendment to Christina's suggested amendment on the dates, and that's why. But I think if we can come to a compromise that we make the 31st Levesque study, that we then have Blair and Lucky, we have the 7th Levesque study. We honor Jack because he's had this study on the radar for us for a significant period of time on CSC, and we certainly think there's some things there that we need to consider as a committee. And that still leaves us with an extremism date at some time following that, either the 14th, the 16th, the 21st, the 23rd. One of those 4 remaining days, we can get another extremism study in there before we rise. That would be my suggestions, Chair, and we can try and make that work.
The big elephant in the room, though, is that translation, and that's the issue. We don't even have the recommendations translated at this point for the Levesque study. So it's just a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge for every committee, but for us, it's a unique challenge. But I take your overall point that we got to give ourselves a real chance to be able to table both the racism study and the Levesque study. I think in principle everyone agrees with that. I think Pam was up first, and then Jack.
Thanks, Chair. So if I'm not mistaken, other than Glenn, we had agreed to till June 7th, and then I think Jack wanted to do CSC on June 9th or Levesque. I'm not sure which, but we'd be agreeable to that. I just want to go back though. The CSC, this was an issue that we studied in the last Parliament a number of times. There's no one on the committee that is more committed to looking at what's going on in corrections. But I also think let's go back to the fact that the Liberal members did this motion as an emergency motion to the Public Safety Committee, because we have concerns based on what CSIS has said, what NSICOP has said. Just today, the leader of the NDP was talking about his concerns around IMVE. There was an arrest made in Edmonton on April 29th, where the RCMP said an ever-increasing concern and challenge faced by law enforcement is the use of the internet and social media as a platform to inspire, radicalize, or espouse extremist messaging or calls for violence. It was in relation to an arrest that was made there. The accused was interacting online with like-minded individuals in posting extreme views that ultimately escalated towards him engaging in criminal activity that posed a considerable risk to public and police safety, ultimately resulting in his arrest. So I want to draw us back to the fact that we as Liberals felt that this issue required immediate attention. So I'm glad everybody agrees with that. I think it's just timing. I think we've gotten down to probably June 9th at least, and June 14th to do the border study. And then we could, on the 9th, either look at CSC or continue Levesque, depending on what Jack is suggesting. But I think the schedule and I did keep in mind the lengthy time that's required for translation. This wasn't an attempt to put off Levesque at all. It was more a reflection of the amount of time that the House is requiring right now to get things translated. And we have to be cognizant of that. So, I mean, the longer we take to finalize the Levesque study, the less likely it is to get tabled in the House. So I think all of us working towards getting that done if we could in a day, and I recognize that that's extremely optimistic, but I'll leave it at that, I think, for now, Chair.
Okay, I think the big question is whether Mr. Fisher is eating an Annapolis Valley apple. Yeah, guaranteed. Okay, guaranteed.
Chair, do you want me to put a motion for us to discuss to amend my motion, or
I think we're jogging along somewhat close to consensus before we get to the motion stage. We've basically agreed to the 7th. We could leave it at the 9th.
Hold on, Chair. Point of order. I didn't agree to the 7th.
I said we're jogging along. We're mostly agreed.
Well, yeah, and we still have Christina's amendment on, which takes precedent yet before we move any further. I just want to make sure that
her amendment was taken over by your amendment, and so your amendment is the only one that's formally still through. And the way I heard the 2 comments ago, you were withdrawing it, as commented by Darren, and that we were working out this schedule, and the schedule, except for your concerns about the 31st, was essentially looking like it was agreed to the 7th. And then there was, and what I'm going to suggest is that we leave the 9th to be one of IMV, the border, or CSC, depending
point of order.
on, which one, whose point of order?
It's
Damien.
It's Damien in the room.
So we are. Okay.
So, sorry, Mr. Chair. It was my understanding that Glenn withdrew his sub-amendment to Christina's amendment. So would not procedurally we be currently in discussions on Christina's amendment, which removed, and I believe this is going from memory, but was to replace the May 10th deadline, which was the subject of some controversy at the conclusion of the last meeting, in order to ensure it wouldn't be made out of order for the deliberations that were taking place now. So all of the scheduling is fair discussion, and I think it lends towards the larger debate. But my understanding is that there is currently an amendment that is on the floor that needs to be dealt with before any further decisions can be made.
I could stand corrected. It wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last. But the way I'd understood it was there was the Damoff motion is the main motion as proposed amendment by Michaud, proposed sub-amendment by Motts. Michaud withdrew in favor of Motts, and then Motts in turn, I'd interpret it as a withdrawal while we were having a conversation about the various dates, and then Pam and Jack, I guess, put a proposal forward which got us to June the 7th with the one objection by Glenn. Now, I hope I've got that sort of right. Okay, and Jack, you're up.
Yeah, so I'm working my way through this as well because we all have to. And we're working our way through. We've got racism on the 26th. The 31st, I'm not sure. I think that's at the moment also possible racism. Okay, for now. We also have to remember too, if we're looking at scheduling all the time, we might end up losing time because this is the crazy season, as anyone who's been around this problem for any length of time knows, and there's votes galore and God knows what to interfere with our work. So I think we ought to have some flexibility built into this, which is why I made the original proposal. But May 31st, I'm not sure that is totally agreed upon because racism might have to be given priority. And I think, well, I've been thinking about it in terms of priority. And to me, the priority is racism, getting a Bastarash report done because it's doable, which means hearing from the June 2nd thing. So we have lots of time to get a report out on that. And if we don't do it on the day, we might have to bleed into something else. The third priority for a report is the Levesque study, if we can possibly do it. And the other, the IMVE and the CSC, I don't think we're going to get reports on those unless someone wants to move a particular motion that would be in the form of a report. And so I would see us into Levesque on June the 7th. As you said, sir, on June the 9th is open for IMVE, border, or CSE. And the same would be said for June the 14th, IMVE, border, or CSE, unless the one of those has to be the border, and we either use the other one to finish Levesque if we're hopefully going to do it. And then we have that calls that. Then we have room left then for the last 3 days, if they're available, to finish Levesque study, do a third meeting on the IMVE, or which if it hasn't already taken place, and do a second meeting on CSE if it hasn't already taken place. And we still have one floater. I'm not worried so much about what's on the 16th and the 21st and the 23rd as such. And as long as we're all going to be here on the 23rd, whether the House is here or not, we can still be here, and I'm happy to do that.
And I just want to caution folks. I was rather hoping to get some instructions to the folks on Levesque today. To be realistic about it, we can basically plan a month in advance, and even that is going to be subject to the vagaries of parliamentary procedures. So if we could focus our minds so that we can get some coherent path forward, otherwise Levesque won't be dealt with today either. So I think it's Glenn, I think it's Christina, and then I think it's Pam.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Christina had her hand up before me, and then I'll go after her, please.
Okay, Christina.
Merci. Je voulais juste dire.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that it was my understanding too, Mr. Chairman, that my amendment had become Glenn's and that it was withdrawn. But I think it would be simpler and more straightforward if everyone, as Pam suggested, amended her own motion by presenting the dates that she laid out. And if anyone disagrees with one of the particular dates, well, then a sub-amendment can be moved. But personally speaking, I'd feel safer if those dates that we discussed were part and parcel of the motion so that they aren't changed 4 or 5 times like they have been previously. And so we'd know where we were heading for the remainder of the parliamentary session, and we'd know how many meetings we have to conclude the Levesque report. And I think that everyone would be happy, but perhaps if we had it in writing, it would be even better.
Glenn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Christina. That's my thinking as well. I have, as I mentioned before, Chair and team, my concern is the 31st. I think we can live with some adjustments. We haven't heard from the analysts of whether the 31st is a possibility to get at the Levesque after today. We can get at it, again today, and then with the 31st, whether we are going to be in a position to start looking at it differently. And then on the 7th as well, we have some flexibility with the 9, 14, 16, 21, and 23rd, as Jack indicated, on extremism, border, and CSE. But our priorities remain racism, and they remain the Levesque study. Those, I don't think they are anything that we can continue to put off for any other reason. I don't know where we're at with with the racism one, and whether are they going to be ready for us on the 26th? I don't know. I certainly hope so. But I agree. We need to we need to, let's put the dates in here. If there's a date like I'm proposing, as I said, let's shore up something different for the 31st, and I'm good with it personally. But we need to get at the things that we've committed to get at back to tabling in the House, and that's racism and Levesque. No exception.
No question. Pam.
So, Chair, I'll give you a motion to amend my motion that the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security immediately begin a study of 3 meetings to be held May 12th with departmental officials, May 31st and June 23rd. Remove the words no later than May 10th into ideologically motivated violent extremism in Canada. Remove the words that the study consists of 4 meetings because that has already been dealt with. And then I would add at the end, Chair, that the following schedule be suggested for the committee for the remainder of, that the following schedule be suggested for the committee. So May 26th, racism study, May 31st, IMVE, June 2nd, Minister Blair and Commissioner Lucky on Bastarache, June 7th, review Levesque study, and then June the 9th, June 9th, 16th, 21st, and 23rd be Levesque/CSC, 9th, 16th, and 21st be Levesque/CSC, timing dependent, and June 14th be the border study.
Okay.
So I would amend it that way, recognizing that we might have to revisit this after. I mean, I hope that gives some flexibility to the other dates that we can, if we need more time for Levesque, we can take more time for Levesque. It still leaves in the border study, which I know was important to, that was Christina's motion. Blair and Lucky and Bastarache was extremely important. And so that would be how I would amend it. Ideally, I would have preferred to have the 3rd meeting on our IMVE study sooner, but we can live with the 23rd, Chair.
Okay. Everyone's heard the proposal.
I didn't hear the full proposal.
Okay, well, we can go it again.
I missed the after the 9th.
The 9th, Jack, the 9th, the 16th, and the 21st would be Levesque/CSC, depending on how much time we need.
So that's well, I'm not prepared to do that because that doesn't leave that leaves 1 meeting for the CSC, presumably.
I moved IMVE down to the 23rd, Jack.
Yes, I understand that.
Okay.
But then there's no specific date for the CSC, so it can't be planned.
I was just trying to give flexibility. I mean, if we want to do 2 on Levesque and then the 2 on CSC, I'd be fine with that too. I'm just trying to get some flexibility for the chair, not knowing how long some of this stuff is going to take to do.
Joel.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. In that case, perhaps the 9th could be set in stone. The CSE study that Jack's looking for. Testing.
For the CSC
so there's no translation, Chair. Sorry, point
so
of
no
order.
translation.
No translation at all.
Please
Sorry,
speaking
Joel.
peu importe le langage.
Testing 1 2 3. This is the English channel. Testing 1 2 3. This is the English channel. Testing 1 2 3. This is the English channel. So what I would be suggesting is that we set in stone the 9th CSE, which is what Jack was looking for. On the 7th, the review of Levesque. Then the 16th and the 21st, finalising the Levesque study if necessary. So we'd have the border study that Ms. Michaud is looking for. There'd also be the CSE study that Jack is looking for. And then I think Pam covered the rest with her dates. And if we could finish as quickly as possible, we can get started with Levesque in that case.
Pam.
Thanks, Chair. I would see that as a friendly amendment, so it would change June 9th to CSC, and then it would only leave the 16th and the 21st to be CSC/Levesque, depending on the timing. So we would get, I would see that as a friendly amendment to what I put forward.
Dare I ask for a vote? Okay.
Sure.
Okay. I'm a little afraid here. I don't see any hands going up. With that.
So I do have my hand up.
Oh, you do have your hand up.
I'm just not clear on what happens next Wednesday, the 12th, like for the rest of this month, the 12th, the 17th, and the 19th, I think it is.
Okay. The 12th I can speak to. We would start the IMVE study, CSIS, CSE, and the RCMP can make themselves available on that day. And then we would go to, what's the date after that? Then
17th.
No, the House isn't sitting, Takeo.
No, it's the 26th. We would go to the racism study.
Right. Got it.
Okay.
No, I'm clear.
Oh, I knew I should have gone for the vote immediately, and now I got more hands. Okay. Glenn.
If we proceed with the dates as Pam has proposed, we will not get the Levesque study tabled in the House. That is the concern that I brought up before. I withdrew my motion because of the timing, and it appeared as if there was some willingness to make some adjustments to the extremism study and make sure we focus on things that needed to get done. We're still focused on the 31st for an extremism, a second extremism study day when Levesque could be prepared, at that same time. Right? There's no reason why that I can see that we can't have Levesque to be looked at then. If we're looking at the 16th or the 21st, first to have, we're still in committee on Levesque, there's no possible way it's going to be before the House. So, let's not kid ourselves. We need to, let's focus on things that we can get done now. And let's start the studies that are important that we know aren't, won't be done until the fall. It baffles me that we continue to push off and push off and push off and put ourselves in a spot where we're not going to get anything done again. Like I don't understand. I don't understand why we can't finish something that's before the committee for how long now? A year or two on Levesque?
Okay, Jack, apparently your headset is off, according to, I've got a note here saying your headset's not working or something.
I think I'm back now, am I?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I think what Glenn is saying does make some sense. I mean, if we're going to be at the end of June looking back and forth between CSC and Levesque, even if we finished it, we won't get it to the House. So that doesn't make real sense. We ought to put if we're serious about trying to finish Levesque, we have to start it a little earlier, or change the CSE one from the 9th to the 14th and leave the border one a little later.
Pam?
Thanks, Chair. I only added to do Levesque on the 16th and the 21st because colleagues said that we couldn't get it done in a day. I have to say that if we really want to table it in the House, we need to get it done in a day. I think there's going to be a fair amount of differences of opinion in terms of where the Levesque study goes. And it's incumbent on us to get that done that day, or quite frankly, I don't think it will get tabled in the House. So I think that's as Glenn expressed concerns about getting it done. I think it's incumbent on us to do it and get it back to the analyst. I feel really strongly that we need to get the two, everybody seems to have agreed except for the Conservative Party that we need to do these 2 meetings on IMVE. It's later in the month. So, I mean, Chair, maybe we could, we're trying to come to consensus here, but maybe we do just need to go on a vote and see where this goes.
I see Glenn's hand next.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I would, and Pam's probably right. We need to vote on this and then go back and fix it, because I think we'll have to go back and fix it. But like the 26th, we already have a racism study ongoing. The 31st can be a finishing racism and Levesque. We can combine both of those. We have Blair and Lucky. We finished the Levesque on the 7th. And we go from there with the things that are left. I mean, those two, you know, we should have it done by the 2nd then, or we could be done by the 2nd if we really put our minds to it, and then it gets to the House.
The irony on Levesque, Glenn, is that there's probably no agreement among the parties, and so it's actually going to be potentially three separate reports. There's likely little consensus among the parties. So ironically, it actually may go faster, because in the racism study, we tried to made some considerable effort to get a meeting of minds. So, anyways, the ironies. Pam.
Yeah, I just wondered if Robin is still on here, if she could give us a sense of how long translation is taking, because this whole talk of being able to do something on May 31st, we need to wrap this up quickly so we can give her drafting instructions today if we really want to get moving on that study. So I think as we move later into June, I suspect the timing is going to get longer. So I'm recognizing you can't give us a definitive answer right now, Robin, because you don't know what other committees are doing. But I wondered if she could give us a sense, Chair, if that's okay, of translation time.
Robin?
Yeah, so I can't give a definitive answer, but I have been told that translation's been experiencing a lot of delays because a lot of committees are working to finalize reports. So I think it is wise to expect that we'll take at least a couple weeks to translate any significantly sized document. I think the guidelines they usually say is 1,600 words, but I don't know to what extent that is applicable this time of year, and I won't know until I have the meeting with translation. But I'll have to get the instructions on drafting first so that I get a sense of what you're looking for in the report in order to have a sense of the length and be able to give them a heads up about what we're looking for. So if that's helpful, there you
go. So Chair, could we
just
perhaps,
call a vote.
Yeah. Could we get a recorded vote, Chair?
We certainly can. Anybody can ask for it. So we're asking for a recorded vote on the amendment or the motion as amended. And since the mover and the amender were the one and the same, it's one motion. So, Mr. Clerk, you could call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the vote is on the amendment by Pam Damoff. So I will call the roll now. Ms. Damoff.
Sorry, point of order. Since I amended my own motion, is it not on the motion as amended?
I would have thought so, but I will defer to my clerk.
It should be the amendment and then the main motion,
yes,
either as amendment or as unamended.
Okay. Yep. So in favor?
Okay. Point of order, just a technicality, is someone allowed to amend their own motion without unanimous consent of the committee? Just curious as to what the rules for committee procedure are on that.
Mr. Clerk?
It's been done. Usually it's another member moving the motion, but it's been there. We probably do have examples of it being done this way in the past, but typically, generally speaking, it's another member moving it, but it's how the committee wishes to proceed.
and technically I can't recognize rules of motions or points of order in the middle of a vote. So we are in the middle of a vote. Mr. Clerk, please.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes.
Miss Jones,
Yes.
Miss Lambropoulos,
Yes.
Monsieur Lightbound.
Oui.
Mr. Couric,
I vote no.
Mr. Motts,
No.
Miss Stubbs,
No.
Mr. Van Popta,
No.
Madame Michaud,
En faveur.
Mr. Harris.
I vote in favor as well.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour 7-7, nays contre 4-4.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, we want to now move to the Beck conversation. That should be in camera. We are prepared to.
Point of order, Chair.
Sorry. Yeah.
We
well,
only voted on our amendment.
Oh, you're right. I apologize for that. Yes. So we'll call the roll again.
No.
No, sorry,
Chair,
there is
sorry,
a point
I had
right
my
now.
hand up.
Yes,
Yeah.
you did.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. I wonder if I think, first of all, Conservatives want to thank the Liberals for bringing forward this motion. We share your belief in its importance, and certainly have seen the same information from NSICOP and CSIS. So to that end, I wonder if you would accept a friendly amendment, or accept it, see it as friendly, Pam, if we expanded and added to the scope of your motion rather than leaving it narrow in the way that it is now. So just given the fact that both CSIS and NSICOP, for example, say that religiously motivated violent extremism continues to be a top threat. In fact, Jewish people in Canada are the top people who are threatened the most in Canada. So I wondered if we would, by this phenomenon of violent extremism, through which there's often an online component, as you had said earlier. So I wonder if, to make it more inclusive rather than limiting and prescriptive, you would be open to adding the words politically motivated violent extremism and religiously motivated violent extremism immediately following the words ideologically motivated violent extremism, so that this study would encompass the diversity and the variety of threats to individual and public safety, with which Conservatives agree with you that exist and are growing. So I guess that would mean that and then I guess, and just to account for that, then the second reference right now in the motion that says people impacted by IMVE would just say who have been impacted by violent extremism. Does that capture it? Do you want me to make a formal motion, Chair?
Well, let me just find out whether Pam considers that to be friendly.
Okay.
So am I, just so that I understand it, so this would add the words political and religious to ideological.
Right, it would add both of those, so that then the motion would capture all forms of violent extremism in Canada. It would capture ideologically motivated, religiously motivated, hate-based extremism, extremist travelers, including neo-Nazis and ISIS, and then also politically motivated ones.
Okay, but the motion is amended to add
politically motivated and religiously motivated violent
Yeah.
extremism. Exactly.
Yeah.
To ideological, not taking anything away, adding to it. Yeah.
And then removing that last part that you indicated, Shannon, impacted by
violent extremism. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Thank you.
All right. First of all, let me find out whether that's perceived to be a friendly amendment.
Chair, I appreciate Shannon trying to expand. We right now have 2 meetings on this subject. And if you look at the CSIS report, it actually says since 2014, Canadians motivated in whole or in part by their extremist ideological views have killed 21 people and wounded 40 others on Canadian soil, more than religiously motivated violent extremism or politically motivated violent extremism. So while I'm not trying to play down the importance of those 2, I think it's clear from the CSIS report, from the information that Mr. McGinty shared with us, that ideologically motivated violent extremism is worthy of a study on its own. And I would suggest that if Ms. Stubbs wanted to suggest, I mean, we all hope we're back in September. If we wanted to do another study on those, we could look at that. But I think right now, with only 2 meetings scheduled, it would be impossible to expand it. So I would say that no, don't treat it as a friendly amendment. I think we need to deal with the one that is killing 21 people and wounding 40 others on Canadian soil, and treat it in the urgent matter that it is.
Okay, I would perceive though that there is now an amendment on the floor, sub-amendment on the floor. And so the debate is on the sub-amendment. Mr. Harris.
Well, I didn't really didn't have my hand up to debate the sub-amendment, but I do have another issue to raise, and maybe I'll have to wait till the sub-amendment is dealt with.
Okay. Any further debate? Everybody understands the sub-amendment. Is there any debate on the sub-amendment? Seeing none, I'm assuming we want a roll call.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Kerr, yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I think it's unfortunate that there's not a willingness on behalf of the members of the government that are on this committee to expand the study in what I think is an inherently reasonable manner. I know I read the NSICOP report and have been following closely some of the other work, and it's stated very clearly how in fact, and I'm paraphrasing from memory, but that religiously motivated extremism is the greatest threat to Canadians. So I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to ensure that when we undertake these studies, that the committee is not prejudging a conclusion. And what I think is an inherent, a very, very reasonable amendment put forward by Ms. Stubbs would ensure that the committee is addressing the issues that are facing Canadians in a manner that allows the committee to really get to the bottom of what is undoubtedly, and I think that there is universal agreement on this committee that there are concerns that need to be addressed. However, with a narrow scope, I think we limit the work that the committee can do, which would more effectively ensure that we can address what I think and certainly hope is at the heart of this motion. So certainly I plan to support the amendment. I think that it adds to the to the study that has been proposed by the government, and would ensure that it accomplishes, like I said, what I hope is the objective here. But for the committee to limit itself and prejudge its outcomes, I think would be an unfortunate restriction. And again, I think it's unfortunate that it wasn't accepted as a friendly amendment. But the fact that we could do good work as a result, I would hope that members would consider supporting that.
Glenn, and then Pam. Pam and Jack, or I'm not sure which one was up first. Glenn?
Thank you, Chair. What I will add is that, as Damien said, we want to prejudge what what is ideologically motivated or religiously motivated. Because for some, in many cases, quite honestly, what I might consider to be religiously motivated hate crime, extremism, might actually be religiously motivated. And so the challenge that we are going to be facing is trying to differentiate the issue. So let's avoid the issue of any gray area and have it all encompassing, because the overarching theme for all of these is violence. It's the violence. And so it doesn't matter whether I'm ideologically or politically or religiously motivated. It is the violence that puts Canadians at risk in this country. And as Damien said, let's not limit ourselves to, again, we're going to have witnesses who are going to have varying views. We're going to have witnesses who will talk about extremism in all of its forms, not just ideologically motivated. As because I said, because some may consider religiously motivated extremism to be an ideology. So why would we put ourselves already, in a gray area where we're going to be, having dual motives trying to be debated, as opposed to the issue of violence because of extremism? And so I will be supporting the motion as a result, or the amendment. Sorry,
Jack and Pam.
Yeah, I wasn't hadn't had my hand raised initially to weigh in on this, but I have since I've listened to the discussion, decided I have a view that would support the motion as it is, not because Glenn hasn't made a very good point or the points are there, but I think we're only talking about 2 meetings, and the possibility of a third, which is doubtful, and it's kind of focused. And if we go into the fall, then I'd be amenable to amending it or expanding it if the will is there. And I agree, sometimes it's hard to tell. I mean, is anti-Semitism religious-based, or is it something else? It's not. It's extremism. It's terrible and awful. And as was pointed out, one of the worst, most common forms of most common forms of discrimination, which can be violent as well. But I think, this study and the intention of the mover from the very beginning was to deal with the specifics of ideologically motivated, politically motivated, I guess you'd call it, extremism, that as a new phenomenon that we need to look at. If we only have 2 meetings, let's stick to that. I'm just saying nothing about the concerns of other very equally important types of extremism, but given the nature of the recommendation and from the beginning and all the debates so far, I don't think we should change it for now.
We're down to 45 minutes or drafting instructions on Levesque, just taking note.
I'll have my other comment though as well.
Yeah. With that, I think it's Pam, then Christina.
Thanks, Chair. I just I agree with Jack. I think with a short study, I also want to remind people that there have been no Canadians killed in 2020 due to religiously motivated violent extremism or politically motivated violent extremism, but there have been. And we heard very clearly from Mr. McGuinty when he appeared, and I'm sure we will hear from CSIS when they appear and they can give us some clarification on this, but that this is a new phenomenon, that it is rapidly increasing during the pandemic. And I think it's important that we look at this in our 2 short meetings, possibly 3. It's something that Canadians need to, we're the Public Safety Committee. I think this is something that is new. It's a threat. I remember Mr. McGuinty saying that the number of people, Canadians, involved in ideologically motivated violent extremism was higher than the US and the UK and had risen during the pandemic. So I'm going to leave it there, Chair, because I think we need to vote on this and then deal with our drafting instructions before 5:30.
Christina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to reiterate that we don't have much time to work left on the Levesque report. We're having trouble agreeing on these motions, and yet we have our work cut out for us and so much work ahead of us that I think that it's unrealistic to broaden the study when we only have 2 meetings to do so. If we'd had many meetings ahead of us, we could have broadened that study, but given the current context, we don't have the time or the opportunity to broaden that study. So I think we should focus on the current motion, vote on it, and then move forward with the Levesque report because we already don't have much time left in today's meeting.
Jack, is your hand still up?
Yes, it is, sir. I don't know if I was misreading or had a note here that ended up that the motion that we passed actually has a provision for 1, 2, 3 meetings in June, potentially, of the CSE/Levesque study, going to June 21st, when there's no possibility of anything being translated to get to report to the House. And given that, and if I'm wrong about that, if June the 9th is reserved for the CSC study, then I would be okay. But if I'm wrong, then we've got 3 meetings in June after the 7th, which are for either the CSE or Levesque, and that means that CSE is only tentative, and I would like to ensure that at least one meeting be guaranteed, particularly since we are not going to get a report from the Levesque study back to the House. So I would want to now that we're on the main motion, I'd like to amend the main motion by suggesting that one of these meetings be reserved specifically for CSE. I'd prefer the 9th, but I'd accept the 16th.
That would motion, your amendment wouldn't be quite in order just yet.
Chair, I think if we
yeah.
check with the clerk, I said that
That's what I was
June
just
9th
gonna say.
would be CSC.
That's what my notes say as well, but I just want to confirm.
If that's correct, then I don't need a motion.
Yeah. Mr. Clerk?
Those were my notes as well, although I could always double check with the Blues once they're published.
Okay. Does that satisfy?
Satisfied to me.
Okay. Pam, are you calling for the vote or you want to speak?
No, oh, sorry, I forgot to put my hand down, Chair. Sorry, we're going to vote.
Okay. Do we need a recorded vote? Okay. Those in favor of the amendment as proposed by Ms. Stubbs? I see 1, 2, 4. Jack, you're up. 5. Those opposed?
Oh, I'm sorry. That wasn't my vote. Sorry.
Okay. So are you for or against this motion, Jack?
I'm against this is the motion to amend the study.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I thought we had voted on that.
No.
All right. I am opposed to the motion.
Okay. Okay. All of the hands up and down and sideways, I think that motion is lost. We're now on the main motion as proposed. Those in favor?
Can we get a recorded vote, Chair?
We can indeed. Mr. Clerk.
The question is on the main motion as amended. Ms. Damoff.
In favor?
Mr. Fisher.
En faveur.
Ms. Jones.
In favor.
Ms. Lambropoulos.
In favor.
Monsieur Lightbound.
En faveur.
Mr. Couric.
I vote in favor.
Mr. Motz. Mr. Motz.
I vote in favor.
Ms. Stubbs.
In favor?
Mr. Van Popta.
In favor.
Madame Michaud.
En favor.
Mr. Harris.
In favor.
Mr.
I can
Chair.
count that one.
Mr. Chair, 11 pour, 11 for, nays contre, 0.
Well, that was a painful path to unanimity, but here we are. Now, as I was 10 minutes ago, about to go into in camera, can you give us instructions on that, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Chair, you will need to suspend the meeting while we set up the in-camera Zoom. I will now send out the connection information to all members on and about connecting to the Zoom meeting. It's a different Zoom, so it has the in-camera protections
So
afforded
we
to
are
it.
suspending, but we are leaving. Okay. With that, we are suspended. See you shortly.
you.